Are you a 5e player looking to try out Pathfinder? In this video, I'm going to explain 3 important distinctions between the systems that can serve as a launching off point for learning about Pathfinder in greater detail. I'll talk about the degrees of success system, player movement in combat, and the differences between spellcasting in the two systems. You're probably familiar with the ways that d20 rolls work in D&D. You have a DC you're trying to roll at or above. The system in Pathfinder works very similarly. You still have a number you're trying to beat, you still roll a d20, and you still add your proficiency bonus. Here's a visual for the two systems. Don't worry too much about the DC for the Pathfinder system being so much higher. The DC for every check in Pathfinder is higher, but the modifiers are also higher to compensate. The real biggest difference is that you have more than just one degree of success or failure. In D&D, you sometimes have something known as a save or suck spell. If you fail your save, you have to deal with some terrible consequence. If you succeed, nothing happens. In Pathfinder, things tend to be a bit more precise. The way the degrees of success system works allows for a severe effect to exist beside minor inconveniences in the same spell. If you critically fail a check, you could receive some terrible effect, like taking double damage or being blinded until you can find a cleric. Luckily, critically failing a check in this system is very rare. Another thing that works differently in Pathfinder is their use of natural 1s and 20s. Rules as written, the only time these come into play in D&D is on attack rolls, where they cause a critical hit or a critical miss. Some DMs use house rules, such as a crit miss having an additional failure effect, or natural 1s and 20s applying to all skill checks. In Pathfinder, nat 1s and nat 20s apply to all checks, but instead of automatic success or failure, they move you up or down a success state. For example, if you rolled a natural 20 on your saving throw with a plus 12 bonus, against a DC of 30, that would be 32. This would otherwise just give you a success. Because of this rule, you would get a critical success instead. This rule maintains the importance of a nat 1 or a nat 20, while making them balanced enough to apply to every check in the game. There are also significant differences to movement in D&D and Pathfinder. In this example, Johnson the fighter is in combat with his friend Asha the ranger against a skeleton. The skeleton is out of range of Johnson's attacks, so he uses his movement to get into range. Typically, all 3 tokens stay there until the 2 party members are downed or the skeleton is dead. Neither side wants to move and potentially provoke an opportunity attack. Let's replay that same combat in Pathfinder. There are 3 important distinctions to make before we start. First, moving, like most other things in Pathfinder, costs 1 of 3 actions you receive on your turn. Second, creatures receive a penalty to their AC if you and an ally are on opposite sides of them. Third, opportunity attacks, or reactive strikes as they're called in Pathfinder, are much less common, with only a handful of classes and monsters getting access to them. Now, back to the combat. Johnson knows the skeleton does not have a reactive strike, so he chooses to spend an action and move across the battlefield up to his move speed, 25 feet. He and Asha are now flanking the skeleton. He spends the rest of his actions and ends his turn. The skeleton's turn is up next. He chooses to use the step action and move only 5 feet, up and to the left, to avoid Johnson's opportunity attack. This also makes it so that he is no longer flanked and forces Asha to move if she wants to continue attacking him. He uses the rest of his actions and finishes his turn. On Asha's turn, she strides to move back into a flanking position. All of these interactions make combat feel more alive and mobile. It also makes the game more interesting for martials. Finally, I want to talk about one transition that many people struggle with in Pathfinder, the apparent nerfing of spellcasters in general. But first, if you've enjoyed this video so far, or you've learned something new, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I plan to do weekly videos like this to teach D&D players more about the Pathfinder system. Now, back to spellcasting in Pathfinder. There are a few reasons that people think spellcasters have been nerfed in Pathfinder. First, spellcasters are more constrained in some areas. The spell lists are purposefully limited to make each of the 4 spell traditions feel unique. For example, arcane casters have no healing ability, and divine casters struggle with direct damage. The upside to this is that players are able to target the weaknesses of enemy spellcasters, and can work together to capitalize on their strengths. Second, it's easier in Pathfinder for a spellcaster to target the weaknesses of a particular creature. The saving throw system is simpler, with only 3 types of saves. The 3 types are Will, based on Wisdom, Fortitude, based on Constitution, and Reflex, based on Dexterity. The system also assumes that most monsters will have a high save, a middle save, and a low save. This allows smart players to target enemies' low saves, but more on that later. Third, there are occasionally spells that have been lowered in power. The power of some spells are out of line with their level and had to be adjusted to fit in the balance of the system. For example, a spell like Silvery Barbs has no direct comparison due to how powerful it is for its level. Don't worry though, there are plenty of good spell options in the system that don't break the game's balance. To give an example of all these principles in practice, let's say Warwick, a wizard, wants to cast a spell on a troll war leader. Warwick knows that trolls are foolish, and thus often have low will saves. He casts Daze to capitalize on this weakness. The troll is vastly more likely to fail this save than something like Void Warp, a fortitude save. There you go, 3 big differences between 5e and Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, or if you have anything you thought I should have included, please leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.